Right, so go on, what is it you want to say?
I want to say that their scholars say written standard is the best one, and
Yeah.
at the same time they do taqiyya. We don't need the standard for our stuff because we have belief. This is a double standard that a prominent scholar admits now.
Do you want to show it? Do you want me to read it?
Can we change sides?
What?
Can we change the sides?
The
No, can I stand on that side?
Yeah, if you want. Okay, let's read it. So
Okay.
what is he saying?
Do I need a mic?
You can just speak to my mic.
All right. So, actually, Jay Smith pointed that out, right?
Yeah, go on.
So, the same Yasir Qadhi that threw the Quran under the bus, he was interviewed.
What does he say? Read it.
Read it. You can read it because your English is
What
better.
am I reading?
Right? So,
That statement. So Dr. Yasir Qadhi in Dallas, Texas, in an interview on the YouTube channel Skept Islamica on July 9th, 2025 said this. When asked about the validity of what the Sahaba believed concerning what Muhammad said, responded by saying, "You're well aware that no one in the academy in the West affirms the Muslim Sunni science of Hadith. Nobody. It is considered to be completely discredited."
now, mind you, who is Yasir Qadhi? He has a degree
Yeah.
from Medina,
Yeah.
from the East, and
Yeah.
he has a degree from, I think, Yale, yeah?
Yeah.
So he's completely aware of those standards there. And he says here, okay, the West discredits their Sahaba and also the isnad.
It's saying that he discredits the Hadith science.
Yeah.
So he's saying that he discredits the way in which Muslims verify their hadiths. And I want to give you an example of what he's talking about. So one of the ways that Muslims judge whether you should trust a hadith is that one of the people in the isnad, that all the people in the isnad, for it to be sahih, are pious people. Now, here's a question. How do you know who's pious and who's not? How do you judge? It's a completely subjective measurement. They say things like, they've got to be honest and not to have told a lie. Well, how do you know that someone's never told a lie? They might not have told a lie to you. They might not have told a lie to your hearing. But that doesn't mean that they didn't tell a lie. It says things like that they've got to live in the same city. Right, great. They might have lived in the same city. How do you know they met one another? That doesn't prove that they met one another or heard from one another. So this is the reason why Western scholarship rejects the science of isnad.
Yeah. So, and then the problem is, like, this science of isnad, like, they keep on doing this hearsay for 200-300 years,
Yeah.
right? And then somebody writes it down who lived in a different century, like Bukhari,
Yep.
who lived
200
in-
years later.
Yeah, he lived in a different century, and he lived in Uzbekistan, right?
Yep.
So how can he record? I mean, it's all hearsay
Yep.
that he says to report what happened in the Hijaz. So, and then now Muslims, when they apply a correct standard, an academic standard, this person is completely aware of that. And the fact that he makes the following statement shows again that written standard is higher, because in the third quote he says, like, if anybody, like, continue reading.
The third quote, or the, right.
Well, let's go to the second one.
Okay, so the second quote. Concerning the differences between West and Islam, he went on to say, "My preliminary conclusion is there is no middle ground, and the historical critical method and isnad analysis are two diametrically opposed ways of looking at early Islam, and I don't find much commonality between them as of yet." Now let me just explain. I explained a little bit about some of the obvious problems about isnad science. Here's another problem with isnad science, and then I'm going to explain what the Western methodology is. Another problem with isnad science is that they rely on books of biographies about the people in the isnad. Here's the problem. The books of biographies all come later than the hadith writings themselves, and they use the hadiths to write the biographies. So they're using the hadiths to write the biographies, and then they're using the biographies to identify which hadiths you can trust. That's called circular reasoning. Now, let me explain the Western historical method. The Western historical method is, you look for early evidence. You look for independent evidence. You look for embarrassing evidence. You look for physical evidence. And you take all the evidence that you can find, you observe what you can from that evidence, and then you try to explain what the evidence is saying together without ignoring any aspect of evidence, without distorting any aspect of evidence, and including all the evidence that you have, in the knowledge that new evidence might emerge later that changes your theory. That is called explanatory scope. In other words, it's not coming at it with a presumption that it's true, that it's reliable. You're just trying to take what you can find and see what it says, and see what conclusions you can draw, and you keep your conclusions as close to the evidence as you can. Now, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that that's a better methodology than going, well, I think he was honest, and I think he was pious, and he lived in the same city as he did, so because he told me that he said this, therefore I can trust that he said that.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually two different epistemologies,
and
there it's not science, depends completely on, or not completely, or to a high degree on the purity of this Sahaba, right?
Theirs is not even rational. It's not rational.
That also, so that's the point we're trying to get across to Muslims. Do your own research, like check for the basis of your faith. Like we've been doing this, like actually the Germans challenged the Christians to go look for Christ, to go and look for the manuscripts and something like that. And now it's the turn for the Muslims to do exactly that. So, and now in the third quote, Yasir Qadhi is admitting again that this is a good standard because he said he would buy any book. Can you read it?
Right, so the third quote from Yasir Qadhi. He concluded by saying, as for definitely stating that the hadith go back to the Prophet Muhammad, at this stage of my life, I would have to say, this is what I say as a believer, not as an academic. At this stage. And if somebody proves me wrong, then I would love for him to come across to me and say, no, we can prove it academically. I would be the first to buy his book. In other words, he's saying that the only people that could believe in isnad science are Muslims. No one with a brain, no one with an intellect, no one with an education would believe in isnad science. And the only reason he believes in the hadiths, Yasir Qadhi, is because he is a Muslim, not because he is a scholar.
Yes, and he states that again because other Muslims do listen to it. Yeah, so Yasir Qadhi is a big scholar, and then we also know Shabir Ali, Dr. Shabir Ali, who has his television program together with his daughter. He has debated J. Smith, for example. So the daughter asked her father, hey, what did Shabir Ali say? What did Yasir Qadhi say about the Sahaba there, right? So, and it comes down
Do you want to read it? Or do you want me to read it?
You read it, your English is better.
Okay, which one am I reading?
Like the first one. It comes down to you have to trust or you have to have iman. For example, in the purity of the Sahaba.
So, this is what he said.
Toronto, July 28, 2025.
So, the quote is trust. Well, the quote starts here.
So, Dr. Shabir Ali admitted that everything we know concerning what Muhammad said and did came from 200 to 300 years of isnad.
Which is a non-contestable fact. Even Muslims acknowledge that. So just because it's not quoted doesn't mean that Shabir Ali doesn't believe it. You know that he does. Basically oral tradition. Okay, so then he goes on to say that Muslims could believe these isnads because of the Sahaba. Because he said that the Sahaba were completely trustworthy. This is what he says. Trustworthy, had perfect memory, and what they recited to others was 100% accurate. That's just belief.
Just belief.
It is not fact. That's not evidence. Muslims don't have evidence for their isnads. Muslims don't have evidence for their hadiths. It is just rumour. That's funny because I was just talking to Mansour about rumour.
This is why I brought it up. Like they said, and even the cameraman said to me, "You Christians be quiet about your evidence." And I was just thinking, God, you have no idea what you Muslims still need to present as evidence. All you have is basically faith or something. And then Dr. Yasir Qadhi, like he basically said it's belief, you have to have iman. That's his point. Now, then when we continue chronologically, on July 31st, he was responding to his comments, yeah? Dr. Yasir Qadhi on July 31st, responding to his July 9th comments, said the historical method, the Western method, was only good for the Bible. So he's now kind of lying to his own Muslims and saying we don't need this standard. So he's completely aware that the West rejects this. He's completely aware it's a better standard because he said I would be the first to buy the book, but he's lying to his Muslim audience and says like it's biased, it's a message only for the Bible.
If you're a Muslim who goes to Dr. Yasir Qadhi's mosque, I urge you to listen. Dr. Yasir Qadhi is misleading you. The historical method is neutral. It isn't just good for the Bible, it's good for any historical text. When I studied history, granted only at A level, I'm not pretending to be a university educated historian, but when I studied history, the same methods that were used in terms of judging the history of the Bible were the same methods that were used to judge the history of Nazi Germany, the Weimar Republic, the European unification of the nation states. It's a method of studying history. It's not Bible specific, ladies and gentlemen. And those same methods can be used on any form of literature, on any historical claim, and that includes Islam. Yeah. The fact that it was tested on the Bible first was simply because in our culture, at the time, the Bible was the most important book. But they didn't do it, they didn't fashion it uniquely to investigate the Bible. They fashioned it to investigate history rationally. And it applies as much to Islam as Yasir Qadhi knows. And when it does, Islam collapses.
Exactly. So that's why I, as a woman, on the streets of Germany, it's not something secure, right, or safe or something, but I still want to speak to our Muslim friends because we love them. I'm just saying, hey guys, don't you want to know the foundations of your faith the same way we actually have good foundations for who Jesus was about the Bible. Whereas Yasir Qadhi has to admit there's nothing but faith that they have. And I completely agree, and this is what we hope for, that we can tell Muslims, hey, you're not safe in Islam, come to Christ.
Let me just explain some of the other problems with hadith. Nearly all of the Sunni hadiths that Sunni Muslims believe come from about 7 or 8 people. Some of them might be slightly wrong. Some of those people were a child when they were near Muhammad, like Aisha. Some of those people only knew Muhammad for a year or 2 before he died. And yet, they are people that are meant to have remembered these thousands upon thousands upon thousands of hadiths. Let me ask you this question, honestly, everyone that watches this, everyone who's listening. Think of the person you love the most in this world. If you were asked to write down how many individual, unique, and precise memories you have of that person, how many memories do you think you could write down? Put your hand up if you think it's going to be more than 10. Keep your hand up if you think it's going to be more than 50. Keep your hand up if you think it's going to be more than 100. Keep nobody. And do you know why? Because you're answering the question honestly. Do you think that people in the past were any different than people today in terms of how their memory works? Of course not. So the idea that 7 or 8 people could remember thousands of individual events, comments, statements and actions is completely fallacious, rubbish, nonsense and a lie. Furthermore, Muslims like to say, oh yes, but people had better memories back then. And people can remember long speeches. Of course they can. Actors remember long speeches all the time. Go and watch Shakespeare. But the reason why they remember them is because of active memory, because of recitation again and again and again and again and again. The only way people could have remembered Muhammad's speeches and Muhammad's actions if in every day and in every instance they were deliberately trying to remember everything he said all of the time. But even if they did that, they would not be able to remember because their mind would just be too clogged. And so you know just by using your reason that the hadith corpus is bullshit. It's rubbish, ladies and gentlemen. And yet the hadith is used to interpret the Quran. Shall we take questions or press on?
No, just one comment. It gets even worse when you go to the manuscripts, because in order to even say what you have in the hadith, the manuscripts that are extant, they are hundreds and centuries later. So if you ask a Muslim, what is even your hadith, where most of their fiqh comes from, most of their sharia comes from, there's the problem that Bob pointed out with isnad science itself. On top of that, you have to question, where are your extant manuscripts?
Yeah.
So they're very, very late. So and these manuscript problems, you have them for the hadith, you also have them for the
Quran,
the Quran,
the tafsir,
you have them for the tarikh, so the history,
sirat,
and most of all for the sirat. Yeah, so what many Muslims read today was actually put down together by a German scholar who went through the literature and chose from 4 manuscripts only and left out all the stuff that was too violent in his idea or had too many fake miracles. So if Muslims or any Western scholars honestly, neutrally apply the historical method, so much is going to come to be revealed. It's going to be detrimental, but it's going to be truly honest. And any Muslim should want to stand up on a true foundation and not a fake foundation.
Yeah, and this is the point, is that you've got things like Sahih al-Bukhari, but your earliest copy of Sahih al-Bukhari comes 200 years after Sahih al-Bukhari. So that means that he recorded his book 200 years after the events, and your first full copy of Sahih al-Bukhari comes 200 years after Sahih al-Bukhari. Also, if you actually read the biography of Sahih al-Bukhari, he was considered a deviant in his own time. So what were Muslims using for 400 years to interpret the Quran, to create their fiqh? I'll tell you what they were doing. They were using local custom. And the thing that triggered the shift to hadiths was because a group called the Mutasilites wanted to interpret the Quran through reason. And a man, I think his name was Hanafi, I might be getting that wrong. Hanbal, yes. Hanbal argued with the Mutasilites and asserted that we should have tradition over reason. And then from that moment, Muslims started to prize reason less than hadith tradition. And so tradition moved from the edges closer and closer to the center of Islam. In other words, the Islam that came to exist was not the Islam that Muhammad founded, because Muhammad never founded a religion that used hadiths.
And if you check the hadith, it just comes down. It's so easy to put an isnad to anything.